The cold darkness of space stretched endlessly in all directions, as the Zephyrian research vessel Seeker's dream slowly tumbled through the void. What had started as a routine scientific mission to study cosmic radiation patterns had turned into a nightmare when a micrometeorite shower had punched dozens of holes through their delicate, crystalline hull. Captain Veltar stood on the bridge, watching helplessly as his crew scrambled to patch the breaches. The ship's beautiful bioluminescent control panels, normally glowing with a soft blue light, now flickered weakly, like dying stars. Their atmosphere was bleeding out into space faster than their recycling systems could replace it. The elegant curves of their vessel, designed more for beauty than durability, were buckling under the stress. "Captain, life support is down to 30%, reported his chief engineer, her voice tight with worry. "We have maybe 6 hours before the air becomes unbreathable." Veltar closed his 4 eyes and made a decision he never thought he would have to make. His people were proud, advanced, sophisticated. They had mastered faster than light travel, when most species were still throwing rocks at each other. But pride wouldn't save his crew from slowly suffocating in the darkness. "Activate the universal distress beacon," he ordered quietly. His crew turned to stare at him in shock. Broadcasting their location and weakness to unknown species was considered shameful, even dangerous. Pirates often monitored distress frequencies, looking for easy targets. And this particular region of space was controlled by humans, a species the Zephyrian databases described as primitive, violent, and unpredictable. "Sir, are you certain?" his communications officer asked. "The nearest civilized world is weeks away. The only species close enough to help are those humans, and our intelligence reports suggest they're barely past nuclear weapons development." Veltar looked around at his dying ship and his frightened crew. Young scientists and researchers who had volunteered for what should have been a safe mission into the outer reaches of known space. They didn't deserve to die because of his pride. "Send the signal," he said firmly. The message went out in standard galactic frequencies, a simple mathematical sequence that meant the same thing across the galaxy. "Help us, we are dying." Meanwhile, millions of miles away, Lieutenant Jimin sat at his monitoring station on Earth's outer defense platform, watching the endless stream of cosmic background noise that filled his screens. It was boring work, scanning for threats that rarely came, but someone had to do it. He was sipping his coffee and thinking about his upcoming leave when an unusual signal pattern caught his attention. The computer flagged it immediately. This wasn't random cosmic radiation or a pulsar. This was artificial, structured, mathematical, and it was coming from deep space, from a region where no human ships were supposed to be operating. Jimin's hands flew over his controls, running the signal through translation protocols. His blood ran cold when he saw the result. It was a distress call. Someone out there was dying, and they were asking for help. Without hesitation, he opened a priority channel to Fleet Command. "Admiral Hannah, we have a Priority 1 situation. Unknown vessel in distress at coordinates 7-7-Mark-15. Admiral Hannah's voice crackled through the speaker, skeptical and tired. "Unknown vessel. Could be a trap, Lieutenant. What makes you think we should risk our people for strangers?" "Ma'am, someone's dying out there," Jimin replied simply. There was a long pause. Then Admiral Hannah's voice came back, resigned but determined, signaled the resilience. "Full emergency response." Captain Taeyong gripped the armrest of his command chair as the resilience dropped out of hyperspace with a bone-jarring shudder. Through the main view screen, the alien vessel came into view, and it was nothing like anything in their databases. The ship looked more like a work of art than a spacecraft, with smooth crystalline surfaces that caught and reflected starlight in beautiful patterns. But even from this distance, they could see the damage. "My God," whispered his navigation officer, Minji. "Look at those hull breaches. How are they even still alive in there?" The alien ship was spinning slowly, completely out of control. Long cracks ran along its surface like spider webs, and atmosphere was venting from multiple points, creating ghostly white trails in the vacuum of space. The once bright blue lights that seemed to pulse through the ship's structure were now dim and flickering weakly. "I'll stop," Tae-young ordered. "Maintain safe distance until we know what we're dealing with. Communications, start broadcasting on all known frequencies. Let them know we're here to help." Lieutenant Hunwoo, at the communications station, looked uncertain. "Sir, what if they don't speak any of our languages? What if they think we're attacking?" Tae-young thought for a moment. "Start with mathematics. Universal constants. Pi, prime, numbers, basic physics. If they're advanced enough for space travel, they'll understand we're trying to communicate peacefully." While his crew worked on establishing contact, Tae-young turned to his chief medical officer. "Dr. Soyin, prepare emergency medical supplies. We don't know what these beings look like or what they need, but get ready for anything." "Already on it, Captain," she replied, her team already rushing to prepare portable life support equipment and universal medical scanners. Inside the dying Zephyrian vessel, Captain Veltar watched the human ships appear on his failing sensors, with a mixture of hope and dread. The human vessels were crude-looking compared to Zephyrian designs, all sharp angles and bulky armor plating. They looked like they were built for war rather than exploration. "Captain, they're trying to communicate," his communications officer reported weakly. "They're broadcasting mathematical sequences, basic scientific principles." Veltar was surprised. Pirates usually just demanded surrender. Hostile species typically opened fire immediately. But these humans were trying to talk, trying to establish peaceful contact. Still, he remained cautious. His people's history was full of encounters with species who seemed friendly at first, only to reveal their true intentions later. "Can we respond?" he asked. "Barely, sir. I can send basic signals, but our transmitter is damaged." Before Veltar could reply, a new transmission came through, this time in broken but recognizable Galactic Standard. The translation was rough, clearly done by computers, but the message was clear. "Unknown vessel. This is Captain Tae-young of the human ship Resilience. We received your distress call. What is your condition? How many crew members need assistance? Do you require immediate medical attention?" Veltar stared at the message in disbelief. No demands for payment, no threats, no attempts to claim salvage rights. Just simple, direct questions about their welfare and how they could help. His first officer leaned over. "Sir, this could be a trick. They might be trying to learn our weaknesses before they attack." But Veltar was studying the scans of the human ships. Despite their military appearance, they weren't in attack formation. Instead, they were positioned like they were preparing for a rescue operation. Medical ships, engineering vessels, even what looked like a mobile repair facility. "Sir, they're asking again," the communications officer reported. "They want to know about casualties and medical emergencies." Veltar made his decision. "Tell them we have 43 crew members, 12 wounded, and our life support is failing rapidly." Chief Petty Officer Minho floated through the airlock into the Zephyrian ship, his heavy boots clanking against what looked like polished crystal floors. Behind him, his engineering team carried toolboxes, welding equipment, and enough spare parts to rebuild half a space station. The contrast was striking. The alien corridor was all flowing curves and soft lighting, while the humans looked like walking scrapyards in their bulky spacesuits. "Holy smokes," muttered Sergeant Dong-yoon, his voice crackling through the comm system. "This place looks like the inside of a jewelry box. How do we even know what we can touch without breaking it?" Minho was already scanning the hull breaches with his portable analyzer. The damage was worse than they'd thought. The Zephyrian hull material was some kind of bioengineered crystal that was incredibly strong but also incredibly brittle. Once it cracked, it kept cracking like a broken windshield. "Forget trying to understand their tech," Minho said, pulling out a plasma welder. We fix this the human way. 1. Start cutting metal patches from our spare hull plating. Make them twice as big as these holes. A Zephyrian engineer named Kexo watched in horror as the humans began cutting ugly rectangular pieces of dull, gray metal. In Zephyrian culture, repairs were done with careful precision, matching materials exactly, maintaining the aesthetic beauty of the original design. What these humans were doing looked like vandalism. Wait, please, Kexel called out through the translation device. You cannot simply weld crude metal over our biocrystal matrix. The molecular incompatibility will cause structural weaknesses throughout the entire ship. Minho paused and looked at the alien engineer. Sir, with all due respect, your ship is leaking air into space. We can make it pretty later. Right now, we keep you alive. Within minutes. The human team was working with the kind of organized chaos that would have given Zephyrian engineers nightmares. They welded metal patches over the hull breaches, not caring that it looked terrible. They ran thick power cables through elegant corridors to bypass damaged systems. When they couldn't find compatible connectors, they simply cut wires and twisted them together, sealing the connections with electrical tape. This is barbaric, whispered another Zephyrian crew member, watching a human technician named Ju force two incompatible systems to work together by literally hammering them into place. But it was working. The air pressure was stabilizing. The lights were coming back on. The ship was no longer dying. Meanwhile, Dr. Yuna faced an even bigger challenge in the medical bay. The injured Zephyrians were unlike anything in human medical textbooks. They had 4 arms, crystalline skin that seemed to change color with their emotions, and internal organs arranged in ways that made no sense to human anatomy. Doctor, I don't even know where to start, said Medic Yonji, looking at a Zephyrian with what appeared to be internal bleeding. Their blood is blue. They have 2 hearts, and I think this one breathes through those slits in his neck. Dr. Yuna took a deep breath and fell back on her medical training. Forget what species they are. Focus on the basics. Bleeding needs to be stopped. Broken bones need to be set. Pain needs to be managed. The principles are the same, even if the anatomy is different. She started with careful observation, using her medical scanners to map the alien physiology. When traditional human bandages wouldn't stick to crystalline skin, she improvised with surgical adhesive. When normal painkillers didn't work, she tried different dosages and combinations until she found something that helped. The Zephyrian medical officer Telwan watched in amazement as this human doctor worked without any knowledge of biology, yet somehow managed to stabilize patients that Telwan had given up for dead. How are you doing this? Telwan asked. You know nothing of our species, yet you save lives that I could not. Dr. Yuna looked up from her patient, sweat beading on her forehead. Because every living thing wants to survive. I just have to figure out how to help them do it. Captain Veltar stood in the human ship's briefing room, still trying to process what he had learned over the past few hours. The rescue operation was nearly complete, his crew was safe, and his ship was operational again. But nothing about this encounter made sense, according to everything he knew about how civilized species behaved. I must ask again, Captain Taeyang Veltar said, his 4 eyes blinking in confusion. What do you want in return for this assistance? Our star charts? Technology exchanges? Mining rights to asteroids in our territory? Captain Taeyang looked genuinely puzzled by the question. We don't want anything, Captain. You were in distress. We helped. That's just what you do. This simple statement made Veltar's head spin. In Zephyrian society, every action had a consequence. Every favor created a debt that must be repaid. The idea of providing expensive assistance to complete strangers without any form of compensation was not just unusual, it was incomprehensible. But you deployed for ships, dozens of personnel, used expensive materials and medical supplies, Veltar pressed. Your government will surely demand reimbursement from my people. Lieutenant Commander Jisoo, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. Actually, Captain, this is just what we do. We have entire divisions of our fleet dedicated to search and rescue operations. It's written into our military code that any ship in distress, regardless of origin, receives immediate assistance. Veltar turned to stare at her. You have military units whose only purpose is to help strangers. The Space Coast Guard, Captain Taeyong explained. They rescue about 3,000 people a year. Merchant ships with engine failures, research vessels caught in solar storms, even pirates who get in over their heads. We help them all. This revelation shook Veltar to his core. The Zephyrians had always prided themselves on being an advanced civilization, but they had never developed anything like this. When Zephyrian ships encountered distress calls, the first calculation was always cost versus benefit. How much would the rescue cost? What could they gain from it? Was the distressed party worth saving? Meanwhile, Chief Petty Officer Minho was having his own confusing conversation with the Zephyrian engineer Kexel. The alien had been following him around for the past hour, repeatedly trying to establish what humans called a service debt. Your repairs saved my ship and my career, Kexel insisted. By Zephyrian law, I now owe you a life debt. You may call upon me for any service, and I am bound to provide it. Minho stopped working and scratched his head through his helmet. Look, buddy, I appreciate the thought, but I was just doing my job. You don't owe me anything, but you must understand, Kexel said desperately. In our society, accepting help without offering payment is the deepest form of dishonor. Please, tell me what you require. Precious metals, advanced technology. I have access to our quantum computing research. Minho looked around at his team, who were all listening to this conversation with growing amusement. How about this? He said finally. Next time you see someone in trouble, you help them out. That's payment enough. Back in the medical bay, Dr. Yuna was dealing with a similar situation. The Zephyrian medical officer Telwan had been offering her everything from rare medicines to complete copies of their medical databases. Doctor, you saved lives that our most advanced medical techniques could not preserve, Telwan said. Our medical council will insist on compensating you appropriately. Dr. Yuna looked up from her notes, tired but satisfied with her work. The best payment you can give me is knowing that your people are alive and healthy. That's why I became a doctor, Captain. Veltar eventually gave up trying to negotiate payment and returned to his ship, but his mind was reeling. As he watched the human vessels prepare to leave, he called his crew together for an emergency meeting. What we have witnessed today challenges everything we know about civilized behavior, he told them. These humans have shown us a form of morality that our philosophers claimed was impossible, true altruism between strangers. His first officer spoke up nervously. Sir, what do we tell the Hegemony Council when we report this encounter? Veltar stared out at the human ships. Their crude but effective designs somehow more beautiful to him now than his own elegant vessel. We tell them the truth. That we have encountered a species that may be more advanced than any of us realized. The news of the human rescue spread through galactic communication networks like wildfire. Within days, every major species in the hegemony had heard the impossible story. Humans had deployed significant military resources to save complete strangers, asking for nothing in return. On the crystalline world of Nexus Prime, home to the Hegemony Council, Senior Counselor Threx read Captain Veltar as official report for the third time. The tall reptilian being's scales shifted from blue to deep purple, a sign of extreme agitation among his people. This is ridiculous, Threx hissed to his aide. No species develops space travel while maintaining such wasteful behavioral patterns. Evolution would have eliminated them millions of years ago. The aide, a nervous creature called Pip from the merchant world of Kala, shuffled through additional reports. Sir, we're receiving similar accounts from other sources. The humans apparently have rescued 17 different ships in the past 6 months alone. Traders, explorers, even known pirates. Threx's scales darkened further. Pirates, they rescue their enemies. According to these reports, yes sir, they apparently have something called the right to life that applies to all sentient beings, regardless of species or past actions. The concept was so alien to hegemony, thinking that Threx had trouble processing it. In his society, the Krek-style resources were precious, and every action had to benefit the group. Helping strangers was foolish. Helping enemies was suicide. Summon? Intelligence Director Vexith, Threx ordered. I want covert observation teams positioned throughout human space immediately. This has to be some kind of elaborate trap. Maybe they're fattening up other species before harvesting them, or perhaps they're building a network of indebted worlds they can control later. Meanwhile, completely unaware they were being watched, the humans continued their normal operations. Lieutenant Duyun sat at her monitoring station on Defense Platform 7, scanning the void for distress signals. It was quiet today, too quiet for someone who had volunteered for search and rescue duty, specifically because she wanted to help. People? Come on, universe, she muttered to herself. Someone out there has to need help. Her wish was granted an hour later, when a faint signal appeared on her sensors. A small trading vessel had suffered engine failure near the asteroid belt. The ship's registry showed it belonged to the Vorth Collective, a species known for their aggressive business practices and casual disregard for other beings' welfare. Doyoon didn't even hesitate. She opened a channel to Fleet Command. Admiral Chanwu, we have a Vorth trader in distress. Permission to launch rescue operation. Permission granted, came the immediate reply. Standard rescue protocols apply. Within minutes, the rescue ship, Mercy, was burning hard toward the distressed vessel. Captain Seokshin had run these operations dozens of times, but he never got tired of the feeling of racing to help someone in need. Hidden among the asteroids, a Krekstal stealth ship watched the human response with growing confusion. Intelligence operative Zenthar had been observing human behavior for weeks, and nothing made sense. Command, this is Shadow 7, he reported. The humans are responding to another distress call. This time it's a Vorth trader, a species that recently refused to honor trade agreements with human colonies. The reply crackled through his communicator. Excellent. This time they'll surely demand payment or extract concessions. No one helps their enemies for free. But once again, the humans defied all logical expectations. Captain Seokshin and his crew worked for 6 hours to repair the Vorth engine, shared their food supplies with the stranded traders, and even provided them with updated navigation charts, all without asking for anything in return. The Vorth captain, a greedy being named Graxul, kept waiting for the humans to present their bill. When Captain Seokjin finally wished them safe travels and prepared to leave, Graxul couldn't contain his confusion. Wait, what do you want? Credits, technology, trade agreements. Seokjin looked genuinely puzzled. We want you to get home safely. That's enough. After the human ship departed, Graxul sat in his pilot chair, staring at the stars. He had spent his entire life believing that every being in the universe was motivated by profit and self. The humans had just shattered that worldview in a single afternoon. Operative Zenthar reported this interaction to his superiors, his own confusion evident in his voice. Command, I don't understand what I'm seeing. Either the humans are the most sophisticated actors in galactic history, or they genuinely help others without expecting anything in return. Senior Counselor Threx received this report in his private chambers, his scales now flickering between purple and black colors that indicated complete bewilderment among his people. Double the surveillance, he ordered. There has to be an explanation. No species can be this good. But deep down, a small part of Threx was beginning to wonder if perhaps the universe was a larger, stranger place than the hegemony had ever imagined. The hegemony council chamber buzzed with nervous Energia's senior counselor Threx outlined his plan to the assembled representatives. The massive crystalline dome housed delegates from dozens of species, all struggling to understand the human phenomenon that was disrupting their carefully ordered galaxy. "We will stage a distress call from the most dangerous location possible," Threx announced, his scales shifting to a determined orange. "The Korth asteroid field, a maze of spinning rocks and electromagnetic storms that has destroyed more ships than any pirate fleet." Counselor Mexara, a floating jellyfish-like being from the waterworld of Aquanus, pulsed with skeptical colors. "And you believe this will finally expose the human's true nature?" "Exactly," Threx replied. "No sane species risks valuable resources for strangers in such a deadly environment. They will either ignore the call completely or demand massive compensation before attempting any rescue. Either way, we'll finally see through their act." The plan was put into motion within days. A modified Korth mining vessel, actually a hegemony intelligence ship in disguise, took position deep within the asteroid field's most treacherous region. The area was notorious throughout the galaxy. Chunks of rock the size of small moons spun unpredictably, while electromagnetic pulses from a nearby pulsar scrambled navigation systems. Captain Velkar, the Korth officer commanding the fake distress call, looked around at the deadly maze surrounding his ship with genuine nervousness. "Command, are we certain this is wise? If something goes wrong, the humans won't be the only ones who die out here." "Maintain position," came Threx's reply. "Broadcast the distress call on all human frequencies." Meanwhile, on Earth's orbital defense platform, Lieutenant G1 was monitoring the deep space channels when the emergency signal came through. The message was clear. A Korth mining ship with 43 crew members was trapped in the asteroid field, their engines failing. "Life support critical." G1's finger hovered over the alert button for exactly 2 seconds, long enough to confirm the coordinates and verify the signal was genuine. Then she slammed it down. "Admiral Borum, Priority 1, Emergency. Korth vessel in distress. Coordinates 7-9-Mark-12. Admiral Borum's face appeared on the screen, her expression immediately serious. "That's deep in the asteroid field, Lieutenant." "Are you certain about those coordinates?" "Confirmed, ma'am. 43 souls in immediate danger." Borum didn't hesitate. "Signal destroyer squadrons 5 and 7 for immediate launch. Hospital ship Compassion to follow. And get me Captain Soman. She's flown that asteroid field before." Within 2 hours, 23 human ships were burning hard toward the most dangerous region of known space. Captain Soman stood on the bridge of her destroyer Indomitable, studying the navigational charts with her usual calm focus. "Ma'am, the field's worse than usual today," reported her navigation officer Yang Ho. "The pulsar's been particularly active. We're looking at navigation blackouts, communication dead zones, and rocks moving in completely unpredictable patterns." "How many people did they say were trapped?" Somin asked quietly. 43, Captain." Somin nodded grimly. "Then we go in. All ships, maintain tight formation. Watch your neighbor's back, and trust your instruments." Hidden throughout the asteroid field, hegemony observation vessels watched in disbelief as the human fleet approached. The humans weren't hesitating, weren't demanding guarantees or payment, weren't even asking for detailed information about who they were rescuing. "They're actually coming," whispered Operative Gixenol from his concealed position. "All of them. They're bringing enough firepower to level a small planet, and they're using it for a rescue mission." The rescue operation that followed became legendary throughout the galaxy. Captain Soman led her ships through the spinning maze of death with skill that bordered on the supernatural. When electromagnetic storms knocked out their navigation systems, they navigated by sight and instinct. When massive asteroids blocked their path, they used their weapons to clear the way. The cost was brutal. 2 shuttles were crushed by shifting rocks. The destroyer Braveheart took a direct hit from a tumbling asteroid and had to be abandoned, her crew rescued by sister ships. 3 more vessels suffered major damage. That would take months to repair, but not a single human turned back. When they finally reached the fake Korth vessel, Captain Velkar stared in shock at the battered human fleet surrounding his ship. These beings had just fought their way through one of the most dangerous regions in the galaxy, losing ships and risking hundreds of lives, all to save people they had never met. "Human vessel, this is Captain Velkar," he transmitted, his voice shaking. We are ready for evacuation." Captain Summon's reply was warm and professional. "Roger that, Captain. Medical teams are standing by. We'll have your people safe within the hour." As human rescue teams worked with disparate efficiency to evacuate the Korth crew, Velkar found himself staring at Captain Soman. "Why?" he asked. "Finally. Why did you risk so much for strangers?" Soman looked puzzled by the question. "Because you needed help. That's what people do. They help each other." Watching from his hidden observation post, Senior Counselor Threx felt his worldview crumble. The humans had just proven beyond any doubt that their altruism was real, even when it cost them dearly. His scales had turned white, the color of shock among his people. The Hegemony Council chamber had never been so quiet. Captain Veltar stood at the center of the crystalline dome, feeling the weight of hundreds of alien eyes upon him. Representatives from dozens of species leaned forward in their seats, desperate to understand the impossible beings that had rescued him. "Explain it again," Senior Counselor Threx demanded, his scales flickering with confusion. "This concept you call humanitarian aid. How does it work?" Veltar took a deep breath, still struggling to put human behavior into words that other species could understand. They believe that all intelligent life has inherent value, not based on usefulness, not based on potential profit, not even based on friendship or alliance, simply because it exists. A ripple of disbelief ran through the chamber. Counselor Zexith, a insectoid being from the hive world of Nexus 7, clicked her mandibles skeptically. "That makes no evolutionary sense. Species that waste resources on non-productive activities get eliminated by natural selection." "That's what I thought too," Veltar replied. "But somehow, humans have built one of the most advanced civilizations in their region of space, while maintaining this compulsion to help others." He gestured to the holographic display showing Earth's rescue statistics. In the past year alone, human rescue operations have saved over 12,000 beings across 47 different species. They've lost 63 of their own people in these operations, and they consider this acceptable. The chamber erupted in confused chatter. The idea of sacrificing your own people to save strangers violated every principle of civilized behavior that these species understood. Counselor Maxara's tentacles writhed with agitation. But surely, they must gain something from this. Technology, territory, favorable trade agreements. Veltar shook his head. Nothing. In fact, many of the species they've rescued have never even contacted them again. Some have actively refused human offers of friendship. It doesn't matter to them. To illustrate his point, Veltar shared the story that had just reached them from the outer colonies. Dr. Yuna, the human physician who had treated his crew, had published her research on Zephyrian physiology in the Universal Medical Database. She had made it freely available to anyone who needed it. 3 days ago, there was an industrial accident on Zephyrian Mining Station Epsilon 7. Veltar explained. A plasma conduit explosion injured dozens of workers. Our medical teams were struggling to treat the injuries because the plasma had caused a type of cellular damage we'd never seen before. The hologram showed the chaos of the mining stations. Medical bay, overwhelmed doctors, working frantically to save lives as patients died around them. Then someone remembered Dr. Yuna's research. Veltar continued. Her notes included treatment protocols for exactly this type of injury. She had spent weeks studying our physiology and had theorized about potential trauma responses we might face. The mood in the chamber shifted as the implications became clear. Dr. Yuna had freely given away medical knowledge that ended up saving lives she would never meet, on a world she had never visited. Because of her research, 30 Zephyrian miners survived injuries that would have killed them, Veltar said quietly. She saved more of my people, in one day, than some of our own medical advances have saved in years. Counselor Threx's scales had turned a pale yellow, the color of deep contemplation among his people. But why? Why would she give away such valuable information without asking for anything in return? Veltar smiled, remembering his conversations with the human doctor. When I asked her that same question, she looked at me like I was insane. She said, because people were dying, and I knew how to help them. What other reason do you need? The silence that followed was deafening. These were some of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, species that had mastered faster-than-light travel, quantum computing, and genetic engineering. But none of them had ever developed the simple concept that helping others was its own reward. Finally, Counselor Vexith from the warrior world of Krax spoke up, his voice rough with emotion. Are you telling us that humans have achieved technological advancement, not despite their altruism, but because of it? Veltar nodded slowly. Think about it. When your people face a crisis, you calculate costs and benefits. You might help if it serves your interests. But humans, they immediately mobilize their entire society to solve the problem. They share information freely. They work together without worrying about who gets credit. And they never give up on finding solutions. He paused, letting this sink in. Maybe helping each other isn't a weakness that evolution should have eliminated. Maybe it's the secret to becoming truly advanced. The chamber remained silent for long minutes, as some of the galaxy's greatest minds struggled with a concept that challenged everything they thought they knew about civilization, evolution, and what it meant to be intelligent. In the end, it was young Counselor Pixara, from the newly spacefaring world of Gentle, who spoke. The words that would change galactic history. What if we've been wrong about everything? The first crack in the hegemony's unity appeared on the water world of Aquanus. Young Captain Luxera, barely old enough to command her own vessel, received a distress call from a stranded research ship near the planet's dangerous ice rings. Following traditional protocol, she should have filed a report and waited for the Hegemony Council to decide if the rescue was cost-effective. Instead, she thought about the humans and launched immediately. Captain, this is highly irregular, her first officer warned as they approached the distressed vessel. We haven't calculated profit margins or established payment contracts. Luxara watched the crippled ship spinning helplessly among the ice chunks. There are 17 people on that ship who might die while we're doing paperwork. We help them first, worry about protocol later. The rescue was successful, but the aftermath sent shockwaves through Aquanus society. When the Planetary Council demanded to know why she had wasted resources on strangers, Luxera's response was broadcast across their communication networks, because it was the right thing to do. Within weeks, similar incidents were happening throughout younger hegemony worlds. On the agricultural planet of Verde, rescue teams started responding to emergencies without waiting for authorization. On the mining world of Rockhaven, engineers began freely sharing safety improvements with other species. The pattern was always the same: younger beings who had heard about the humans and decided to try their approach. The established powers were horrified. On the ancient world of Kronos Prime, Elder Counselor Vexmorth called an emergency session of the ruling body. This madness must stop, he declared, his mechanical voice echoing through the chamber. Our youth are throwing away resources on beings who contribute nothing to our society. But the results were impossible to ignore. Planets that implemented human-style aid policies saw dramatic improvements in innovation, cooperation, and overall stability. When the research station accident happened on Verde, the rapid response saved dozens of lives and prevented an ecological disaster. The grateful researchers stayed to help develop new agricultural techniques that increased crop yields by 30%. Meanwhile, Earth's diplomatic corps was experiencing what could only be described as chaos. Ambassador Chayung stared at her overflowing inbox with growing disbelief. How many first contact requests did we receive this week? Her aide, Secretary Sung-hoon, checked his notes. 47, ma'am. But these aren't typical diplomatic overtures. They're all asking for the same thing. Cha-young pulled up the latest message. This one from the Vorth Collective, the same species that had tried to cheat human colonies just months earlier. The message was simple and direct. We formally request inclusion in human emergency response protocols. We offer no payment, no trade agreements, no military alliance. We simply want to know that someone will come if we call for help. Similar messages had arrived from species across the galaxy. Some were from civilizations that had never contacted Earth before. Others were from former enemies who had experienced human rescue operations firsthand. All of them asked for the same impossible thing, help without strings attached. President Min Seo convened an emergency cabinet meeting to address the situation. We're looking at the possibility of becoming the galaxy's emergency services, she announced to the assembled officials. The question is, can we handle it? Defense Secretary Kang Min pulled up logistics reports. Our current rescue operations are already straining our resources. If we commit to galaxy-wide emergency response, we'll need to expand our fleet by at least 300%. The cost would be enormous, added Treasury Secretary Hyunjin. We're talking about maintaining rescue stations throughout known space, training crews for dozens of different alien environments, developing universal medical protocols. President Min Seo stood up and walked to the window, looking out at Earth's orbital shipyards where new rescue vessels were already under construction. What about the benefits? What do we gain from this? The room fell silent. Finally, Chief of Staff Ryujin spoke up quietly. We gain a galaxy where everyone looks out for everyone else, where no one dies alone in the dark because help was too expensive to send. The decision was made that afternoon. Earth would establish the Interstellar Emergency Response Corps, the first galaxy-wide humanitarian organization in known history. Commander Ji-hoon, the hero of dozens of rescue operations, was chosen to lead it. At the announcement ceremony, Commander Ji-hoon stood before representatives from 67 different species. This isn't about politics or profit, he said, his words being translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. This is about the idea that every life has value, regardless of what planet you come from or what you believe. In the audience, Captain Veltar listened with tears in his 4 eyes. He had watched his own people begin adopting human practices, seen the positive changes spreading throughout Zephyrian society. The galaxy was slowly transforming, one rescue at a time. But not everyone was happy with these changes. In the shadows of the Hegemony Council, powerful voices whispered about the threat that human influence posed to the established order. They began making plans to stop this infection of altruism before it destroyed everything they had built. The real test of human ideals was yet to come. Captain Veltar stood on the bridge of the rescue vessel Hope's Light, watching as his mixed crew of humans and Zephyrians worked together to respond to their third emergency call of the day. The ship itself was a marvel of cooperation. Zephyrian crystal technology merged with human engineering practicality, creating something more effective than either species could have built alone. Captain, we're receiving a distress signal from the Kila sector, reported his communications officer, a young human named Mitsiak. It's a cargo vessel under attack by pirates. 6 months ago, this would have been someone else's problem. Pirates were a fact of life in the outer sectors, and most civilized species simply avoided those regions or paid protection money. But that was before the galaxy learned the human way of thinking. Set course for Kilos, maximum speed, Veltar ordered. Signal the Defender's Promise and Mercy Runner to converge on our location. His co-captain, the human officer Nari, smiled as she watched the crew spring into action. Remember when you used to calculate the cost-benefit ratio before responding to distress calls? Veltar's 4 eyes twinkled with amusement. That seems like a lifetime ago. Now I can't imagine doing anything else. As they raced toward the emergency, Veltar reflected on how much had changed. The Interstellar Emergency Response Corps had grown from a single Earth initiative to a galaxy-spanning network. Rescue stations operated in every major system, staffed by volunteers from dozens of species who had learned that helping others was its own reward. The impact on galactic crime had been unexpected but dramatic. Pirate Captain Grox, the Terrible, had learned this the hard way 3 weeks ago when he attempted to raid a merchant convoy. Before he could even finish his ransom demands, 4 rescue ships had surrounded his vessel, offering medical aid to his distressed crew and completely ruining his intimidation tactics. "You cannot help pirates," Grox had shouted over the communication channel. "We are criminals. We are threatening people." The human rescue commander had replied with cheerful confusion. "Sir, your ship appears to be experiencing engine troubles, and our sensors detect elevated stress levels among your crew. We're here to assist with any technical or medical emergencies you might have." The complete inability of rescue teams to recognize the concept of people who shouldn't be helped had made piracy nearly impossible in many sectors. How do you terrorize victims when helpful strangers keep showing up to fix everyone's problems? The slave trade had suffered even worse disruption. Slavers relied on being able to transport their cargo along established routes without interference. But now those same routes were patrolled by rescue teams whose sensors couldn't distinguish between passengers and cargo. When the slaver vessel Dark Prophet had been stopped by a routine safety inspection, the human medical officer had been horrified to discover malnourished beings chained in the cargo hold. "These people need immediate medical attention," Dr. Sulji had announced, completely ignoring the captain's protests that they were legal property. The slaver captain had tried to explain the economics of his business, but Dr. Sulji had looked at him with the same expression humans reserved for people who claimed that gravity worked upside down. "Sir, these are people, not cargo. People don't get owned." That incident had led to the liberation of 200 slaves and the establishment of new protocols for cargo ship inspections throughout the sector. Now, as the Hope's light dropped out of hyperspace near the attacked cargo vessel, Veltar watched the familiar dance of a rescue operation unfold. The pirates, caught between their intended victim and 3 rescue ships, found themselves in the awkward position of being offered assistance while trying to commit a crime. Unidentified vessels. "This is Captain Nari of the Emergency Response Corps," his co-captain broadcast calmly. "We're responding to a distress call in this area. Do any of your ships require medical or technical assistance?" The pirate leader's voice crackled over the channel, full of frustration. "We don't need help. We're trying to rob these people." "I understand, sir, but if you're having equipment malfunctions that forced you to stop these merchants, we'd be happy to help get your ship running properly again." Veltar suppressed a laugh as he watched the pirates' formation break apart in confusion. This was the new galaxy, a place where the automatic response to any problem was to help solve it. Where? The first question wasn't what's in it for us, but how can we help? The cargo ship captain, a grizzled Mantari trader named Kexalon, later thanked them with tears in his compound eyes. 6 months ago, I would have been on my own out here. Now I know that if I call for help, someone will come. As they prepared to leave, Veltar stood beside Captain Nari on the bridge, looking out at the stars. "Do you realize what we've done?" he asked quietly. Nari looked puzzled. "We responded to a distress call. Same as always." "No," Veltar said, his voice filled with wonder. "We've changed what it means to be civilized. We've proven that the highest form of technology isn't weapons or engines or computers, it's compassion." The young human officer Minsiok looked up from his station. "Captain, We're receiving 17 more requests for rescue teams from worlds that want to join the response corps. Veltar smiled, his crystalline skin glowing with contentment. Signal them that we'll have training teams there within the week. After all, the galaxy's a big place, and there are a lot of people who might need help. As the Hope's light jumped back into hyperspace, ready for the next emergency, the stars themselves seemed to shine a little brighter.